Ah, what a peaceful, nice little view with a sword on the cliff, stars twinkling, and the beautiful title screen of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Makes you feel like you're going to play something nice and comforting. Well, it is for me, but anyway, we'll get into that. Welcome to my first ever Let's Play. This will be a playthrough of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, one of my personal favourite Zelda games, and a game I feel is criminally underrated. Why do I say that? Well, I'll get into it, but first, we have a plot to summarise. After Ganon was destroyed, Impa told Link a sleeping spell was cast on Princess Zelda. She will wake only with the power of the third Triforce sealed in the palace in Hyrule. To break the seal, crystals must be placed in statues in 6 well-guarded palaces. Link set out on his most adventuresome quest yet. What they really should have said is Link sets out on one of his most dangerous quests yet, because this game is known to be one of the hardest Zelda games. People say that it's one of the hardest games ever, but I'll highly disagree with that, because there are so many harder games than this. I think the first Zelda game is a lot harder than Zelda 2. But I can understand why people find this game annoying, or find it difficult, or find it frustrating to finish. But I'm definitely not one of those people. I've played through this game countless times, but I'll say right now I'm not an expert, as you will see a lot of really dumb mistakes in this playthrough. But anyway, let's begin. So first things first, it's a side-scroller. Not top-down like other 2D Zelda games. You move left to right, you can stab, you can duck, you can use your shield by standing still or ducking still to block small projectiles. And you can jump and stab as well, which is very useful to know. You'll get other upgrades, but not a lot to the combat, just 2 new attack styles. Now, when you bump into enemies on the overworld, which are represented by the little cut-out versions of them, you can decide whether you want to go against easy enemies, like the blob ones, or the tougher enemies, which are more the bigger monster-looking cutouts. And you want to fight monsters of all sorts. And one big tip I will give to anyone who's looking at playing this game for themselves, or anyone who wants to get better at this game, make sure you fight a lot of enemies. Especially early on, you want to get as much experience as possible, because this game can get very difficult. Let's get into that as well. So, this game has an experience bar, and basically, every time you hit the point that fills up, so for example here, I need 50 experience points. When I hit 50, I'll get a level up. And when you level up, you can choose to level up your magic, your attack, or your life. Now this doesn't increase the meters, but it does increase how much you can use of that meter. So for example, if you increase your life, you take less damage from enemies. If you increase magic, you use less of the bar to fill up to use your magic spells. And if you level up the sword, you do more damage to enemies, naturally. So as you can see there, after some fumbling about with these keys, which are the bat enemies, by the way, I got a level up. So now I can take a little bit more damage without being killed. And so basically enemies do a lot less damage to me when my life level up, which is extremely useful, and I say life is the most important skill you want to level up as quick as possible. Now a little trick you can use for leveling up skills is you can decide not to level up that skill and wait for the next skill to level up, because it goes in a rotation. So say I said no to leveling up life, it would then go to magic, then it would go to sword. So I could wait until it goes to sword, and it won't change how much experience I need until something levels up to level 2. I, however, like to play in a very level up kind of way. I make sure all my skills are nice and balanced, and I use any sort of level up I get to get strong as quick as possible, even if it means my actual attack power stays quite weak for a long time in the game. So this is the first town, the town of Rauru. And for anyone who's played Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, yes, that Rauru, the Sage of Light, who helps Link when he's an adult, is named after the town in Zelda 2. and there's quite a few Ocarina of Time names used in Zelda 2 for the town names, which I think is a nice little detail. Obviously this came first, so it was cool to see that something like that came back in Ocarina of Time, which is obviously a lot more recognisable than this game. So in every town, there are 3 important people. There's the Red Lady, who's in a nice little dress. She will restore your life. There is another type of lady who wears purple, or will in general be they'll stand out in some way. Usually they wear purple though, and they come out of the building. This one's the most important because they give you the magic spells if you complete tasks for them. In this case, however, they want to introduce you to the game, so they give you a spell for free with this woman. And as she'll say in a moment, each town has one of these ladies, and you want to visit all of these houses in order to get all the magic spells. And you need certain spells to get further in the game, and they're in general extremely useful. There's some incredible abilities, and actually the first one we get is a really useful ability. Depending on how you use it, this can be like exceptionally useful in taking hits and lasting longer. Because we just got the shield spell. And what this does is, when you cast the shield spell, as long as you're on that screen, so say in this house I used the shield spell, I would glow red, and I would take half as much damage from any enemies in that place. But if I left the house or I went downstairs, it disappears and I have to cast it again. So it's a very useful spell for when there's a long corridor of enemies, or it's especially good for boss fights as well, since you know that you're going to have to fight them. So I'm just kind of showing off a bit of the town, but the first town doesn't really have a lot to offer. Some of the townsfolk will give you some good tips, and other ones are just sort of there, just talk in general, and they don't really have a lot of interesting things to say. So one problem I will admit is the townsfolk don't give the best advice. In fact, it's very cryptic or vague on what they're telling you to do. Like, one man literally says, if all else fails, use fire. Like, what? What you on about? Like, what's going on? What he's talking about is, basically, if you find enemies that you can't kill with any sword techniques, in this game's case, it's mostly Tektites and I think Digdoggers as well, later in the game. Although some of the enemy names I don't remember in this game. There's some enemies later on I'll show, but basically some of them can't be killed without using the fire spell, which you don't get until later, so it's a bit weird that they bring that up this early in the game. But yeah, the townsfolk, though, they're useful when you first play the game, because they give you little tips you can write down or you can keep in mind of, but for the most part, you're better off just kind of getting on with the game. The most important one, like I said, is the one that heals your health, the one who gives you a new magic spell in each town, and of course, there's a magic top-up as well. Unfortunately, for the first 2 towns, I wasn't able to find the top-up person, but there is, in most of the towns, someone who will top up your magic for free, so it's really important to see them. The one thing I will say about this game is, it is hard. Like, every enemy that you get hit by, will knock you back, which is extremely annoying and can lead to you falling into pits. Some enemies can take away experience points, as I'll show in the next part. Some enemies can take away magic points, which can be very annoying when you need to cast spells. And then there's just enemies that have really awkward attack patterns. So the little bats, which are Keese, that I was fighting earlier, those guys give me a lot of trouble because they have a very wavy pattern, and I struggle a lot with weird wavy patterns in older games and avoiding them. So I can agree this game is hard, but I don't think that should be a turning point for people who are interested in playing the game, because I think once you understand the basic controls and what you can do with the magic spells, I think this game has a really in-depth combat system, especially for such an old game. it feels really satisfying when you work around your spells or you jump at just the right moment and avoid attacks. Like, I think it's one of the most satisfying Zelda combat systems in the series. But yeah, the other problem, as well as knockback, is the enemy patterns, is that right there. You slide a lot in this game. When you run, you don't just stop, you have a bit of momentum, which is really awkward when you're jumping from pit to pit, or in this case when enemies are really close by. So, because it makes it too easy to just accidentally bump into them, and any enemy you touch you take damage from. Yeah, it's like there are a lot of little cheap moments where it's hard to avoid enemies, but for the most part I think this game gives you enough skills, especially later on in the game when those problems become more apparent, that to me it's not a big deal. I found the difficulty more satisfying than frustrating in this game. These enemies are annoying though. They throw the boomerangs around, but you can block them with your shield to help you out. As you can see here, they do a lot of damage early game, so you do want to watch out for these guys. But with a bit of patience, you can take them out. Now these magic jars that are dropping from enemies now and then, they can top up a bit of your magic, but they only give a little bit. If you find a red one, however, they'll top up all your magic, so it's worth using spells that you'll get later on in the game on them. And here we've got a secret spot where you can get a heart container. So this will top up your life meter. So this will top up your life meter by 1 stage, which is extremely useful for taking more hits. So you definitely want to make sure you grab them. Which, that also leads me on to something else about this game that I disagree with. People say because it's so linear there's nothing to explore. I really disagree. I think that honestly this game has some really cool little hidden collectibles, which are the magic pots and the heart containers, because you can get more life and more magic just by exploring a bit of the world. They're not always obvious, but they're not too cryptic or hidden away. So I really like them. I think it's a simple little thing to explore for, but I think that's enough of a reward for me to find it satisfying. But here we are, the first palace of the game. So next time, we'll be starting the first palace and getting more in depth with the combat and the type of enemies we'll bump into. Thanks for watching.